and welcome to Pale Reflections, a proud member of the Doof Network where we reflect on Larbo's most Mammarian work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we are coming at you live in the Discord for our new arc, Arc 20.
Yeah, called Let's Slip.
Yeah.
That's I mean, that immediately invokes to me the idea that somebody's gonna forswear themselves, right? That's what I'm hoping for.
It's I don't know what this is from, but I'm sure it's a phrase. Let slip the dogs of war, right?
Yeah,
That's a phrase.
that's been directly quoted, I think, by the Wolf in 10.a or something.
Yeah. So I don't know what that means, but yeah. I'm assuming the Dogs of War are gonna have a fun I don't know, a fun role during this arc.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a good one. I was too focused on, just like letting a secret slip or something.
Well, it could be that
So,
too, you know.
well, yeah. No, Walbo only ever
I'm sure
does
it'll
one
have
meaning.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. I'm down for that. But yeah, I was also I'm hoping. I mean, obviously we've already had some secrets leak out in this week's chapters. The Garricks, the Wolf let slip a bunch of shit that the Garricks and Avery would probably rather they didn't. But
well, I wouldn't call it letting it slip. The wolf intentionally,
well, yeah,
intentionally did it. Right, let slip implies to me like a kind of accidentalness to it, I guess.
yeah, it's fair. Well, this is why I'm still hoping someone gets forsworn. It'd be funny.
But yeah, let's get into the chapters. 20.1, we're with Avery, and it starts with this horrifying fake out where we know it's an Avery chapter, and the first words that come up are like, what is it? Like something cancer?
Yeah, it's something about getting a brain tumor and like
Brain
giving
tumor,
up.
that's it. Yeah. So rough. But no, this is a fake Avery. This is Avery from the Musser challenge. We see a bit of what that looked like for her. Or a bit more, I suppose, a bit of the later stuff. But yeah, even at her lowest points, she still seems like a pretty chill person.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was sort of the vibe that Avery took from. I remember at the end of 1917, she mentioned something like that, but it hurt to see it. Like, I'd forgotten how rough Avery chapters used to be at the start of this story. Like, Avery's been kicking ass for so long now that I'd forgotten that, like, at the start of this story, the Avery chapters were the ones that really kind of hit you in the gut with just how, like, tragic her life could be at times. And this was like a dip in the past in that way. It also reminded me a lot of reading Edith's interlude, like 10.z, I think it was.
Yeah, I feel that.
Just her like traveling around the ruins, being miserable was the parallel definitely felt there to me.
The ruins is such a miserable place, just in
Yeah.
general, isn't it? But yeah, it's nice to see.
Sorry, yeah, like because that's the other comparison, right? Is like Hazel versus Avery jumped out to me too, because like Hazel, when she was alone and running, fell to the paths, whereas like this isn't an Avery who's escaping. This is an Avery who's like wallowing in shit. So of course she ended up in the ruins instead of the paths.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think the contrast between the escapism of the paths and the wallowing, I guess, really is just the right word, isn't it, of the ruins. It's nice to see Jessica again, even if it's a alt world Jessica. I mean, it's still pretty nice.
Yeah, and it's still that same thing where like Avery tries to reach out to her, and Jessica's like, "No, I don't trust this."
No, but it works.
But it does exactly. Yeah. It's just like it's the same
Jessica
process.
Seems to take such pity on her that it breaks through Jessica's, like reclusive shell.
Even Jessica can't ignore how tragic this version of Avery is. Yeah. Yeah. I also there's just like so many little other great mirroring moments. Like this is what was so fun about these challenges is the way that we like. I think the judges described it as like they would tend towards doors they'd opened in real life, and there's some fun inversions. Like Avery has her friendship bracelet with Olivia, and she's kind of holding onto it as like her last connection that she had. Like she's wearing it as this example of how she used to be connected, now she isn't. And that's really fun because she still has that friendship bracelet in the real world here, and it's her example of like how she's grown and how that's not who she is anymore. So it's like, this alt version of Avery has held onto it as like, this is how good I used to be. Whereas current Avery has it as an example of how that was some childish bullshit she used to do.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that she's reflecting on this part of herself, huh?
Yeah, that was sort of my question when I first started reading it the first time. I was like, why
Mm.
are we doing
Why
like
are we
why is
here?
Avery thinking about
Yeah.
this? 'Cause especially we learn it's the other verse. Like Avery is literally remembering this and thinking on what it meant for her.
Yeah.
And yeah, part of me was like, why? Like I think it's all sort of a lead into the wolf. It's like because this is the
Yes,
sort of
for
thing.
sure.
Like Avery's able to draw on the fact that she's not this person. She kicks absolute ass. She gives her fireflies like her little glamour check marks as part of that, and also her takeaway is kind of even in the shitty universe where everything sucked and I was at my worst, I was still like a good being who helped people.
Yeah.
Like I still found Jessica. So it's like it's sort of this like even in the worst timeline version of Avery, her she kind of is coming into this confrontation with the wolf in this mindset of I'm still a pretty good person though.
Yeah, for sure. I think I really got the picture on my second read through of these first two chapters that like the wolf's shtick really doesn't work against Avery anymore,
Yeah.
right? Like Avery feels like she's gotten to herself to a point where she just doesn't seem to get as impacted as especially as the rest of the Garricks do. But like comparatively, the wolf can't do shit to her. I mean, like with the emotional manipulation kind of shtick, right?
Yeah.
I guess we'll get to that a bit later.
Yeah, I've definitely like written up a bunch about that. But yeah, I agree. And we've seen this. We touched on this in that episode with Lexi a couple of days ago, where it's like for Avery, I don't. I think for quite a while now, Avery's arc has barely been about her own emotional turmoil. It's about her
Hmm.
network and making sure that her family and friends and the people in her life are safe. And I think we sort of see that pivot in the wolf here too. It's like the wolf tries to kind of attack Avery as a person, and it just like slips straight off of her because
Yeah,
she's far too comfortable and confident in who she is for that shit to work. So
yeah,
the wolf now isn't about attacking Avery directly. It's about attacking like what she's trying to build in her network.
yeah, yeah. But we'll get to that when we
Yeah.
meet the wolf a bit later. But yeah, so Avery checks in with her dad for a bit, and then they head to the station promenade, and we get some fun moments of like almost like a Where's Wally, where Avery has to find the right items to bypass the lock that the Garracks have set up, which is very fun and silly.
Yeah, and they've also increased the security on like the specific combination of invitation colors you need to get in.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's really fun, I guess, sort of seeing these security measures because I still very much view like discovering a new path as like trying to think about a new idea. Like it's the equivalent of like inventing and stuff. And so this is how you. This is the security on like Edison's research vault or whatever, like this is
Mm.
to stop people stealing your in-process research.
Yeah, and I think this starts a theme that I'm going to want to talk about a few times throughout this chapter, which is like the impact that people can have actively changing paths or even
Yeah.
subconsciously, which I think is probably going to be pretty important for Avery going forward, depending on how much more time we get with Avery in the promenade now that she is effectively the queen of it.
Yeah, yeah, this came up a lot in my live read too. I was talking a lot about like because finders come up with the ritual to get to a path. And
Mm,
I was saying I definitely think that ritual would define the path to an extent
yes,
too.
yes.
Like the fact that they chose the invitations, I think has placed even more emphasis on the community vibe of the promenade. Whereas like if they'd gone for like a chess based entry thing, which I think would also be a valid ritual to do because there's obviously a lot of like board
Like square
gamey.
movement, yeah.
Yeah, like that's imagery that also suits the promenade, but that as a thing would focus the promenade more on the competitive gamey element for it. So I think like the
Yeah.
Garricks, whether intentionally or not, made the right call by focusing on the community side.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's kind of Avery's vibe as well, right? And
Yeah,
I think we'll talk. I definitely want to talk about that a bit later because it's pretty clear to me that Avery has influenced the station promenade already, even before she
yeah.
takes it over or whatever. But yeah, like this is going to sound stupid, but I really do think that I guess the way to put it is they're not just finders, but they're also keepers. You know what I mean? Of the paths that they come
Yeah.
across.
Yeah, well, because like to lean into that analogy again of like like if you're inventing like so Newton discovering calculus, right, is the sort of equivalent of finding a path to me.
Mm,
And what's really important is the person who initially discovers this sort of stuff defines the terminology and the symbols you use. Like, there's
yes.
no like uh, in like calculus and stuff exists in the universe or whatever, but Newton was sort of the one who was like, this is how we're going to express it. Like, this is the
Yeah.
language we'll
Yeah.
use. And I see finders initially discovering and kind of claiming these paths as the same sort of thing. Like this idea existed in the sphere of thought in the universe, and the first finder to sort of process it and then start sharing it with others is the one who flavors it in their way of communicating it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Singachi's bringing up the whole thing. The reason I chose Newton in his calculus example is because two people kind of independently discovered calculus at the same time, which is why it's such a fun example. Because I think you say the same thing with the paths.
Mm.
Yeah, I went into that at length in my live read a bit, so I won't carry on about it here. But yeah, I think also the other thing we should talk about, even more important than the promenade, is Snowdrop gives us some of the details here about Cherry Pop's slide that goes
Even
all
more
throughout Kennet.
important. Is that right? Yeah.
Yep, yep. That's what I'm that's what I'm claiming. I mean, no, like genuinely, it sounds like this slide is actually kind of cool. And they're gonna get soot sleeves involved, maybe, to power it. And I this forget the market. This is gonna be the real tourist attraction for for Kennet now is Cherry Pop's kick ass slide that goes all around Kennet. Like this is gonna be Kennet's public transport.
Public transport slash big tourist attraction.
Yeah, slash goblin slide. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so Avery arrives at the promenade and starts helping. First, she delivers a letter, and as she's helping the promenade residents, she also helps Esme, who's kind of wrangling some children that are getting attacked.
Yeah, she got a much harder job than Avery from the scenes of it.
Well, yeah, and it's pretty clear. It becomes pretty clear, especially in the second chapter here, that um, the station residents can choose how difficult the job is.
Yeah.
Kind of right, like so. Again, Avery, by virtue of being nice and good to people on the paths, presumably just gets an easier job as a result.
Well, and she goes to a job that's not like we hear that other people are turned into firefighters and stuff. Avery just goes to help somebody who's like crying. Like
Yeah.
she also chooses a job for somebody who like needs help as opposed to like I think the first job we hear about is that Cliff is a policeman, which I had a really good chuckle about on my second read. Like take the hint, bro. But yeah, you're right. Like we see there's that great moment later on where there's like the war going on, and Avery's like, "I need a job," and the guy's like, oh, "Put a stamp on this. You're done. It's good. Get the
Yeah.
fuck out of here. Make this place normal again." Like it's hilarious.
Yeah, and I really do think this is because explicitly Avery has a bit of an easier time with these jobs
Mm,
because she's kind of already started to be enmeshed within the promenade, right? Like, she did
yeah,
her familiar ritual here. I think the fact that the station promenade has leaned more towards the community vibe and less towards the strategic movement of pieces around a grid of squares is because it's already started to get a bit of Avery influence in it, right? Like,
yeah. Well, and like this first job, is really interesting because the worm woman is like, "Oh, you need to find my husband," blah blah blah, and
mm,
Avery is just when she gets to the train, she's like, "Oh, it's Mister Spider," and
Mr.
like she doesn't
Business
get
Spider, yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't get told that. She just remembers it from her familiar ritual. Like at no point is she told that's who the spy. Oh, that's who the husband is. She's just like she just remembers it because she remembers the lost.
Yeah.
Because she's a good person.
Yeah.
And yeah, like
Yeah.
numerous times she and Snowdrop are explicitly called out by denizens. It's like, oh, you're the
Oh, we
guys who
were
did the
being true.
familiar
Yeah,
ritual
your
here.
ritual
Like,
was
yeah,
really cool. Blah blah blah. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
I think it would be cool for Avery to do I don't know exactly what it would look like, but now that Avery clearly has some really strong ownership or sense of place here at the end of these chapters, a domain ritual on the promenade might be very fun. I don't know exactly what that would look like, but would be cool.
I mean, I guess the thing is, I think she's ceding a lot of it to the Garricks, so
Yes. Yeah,
it
true.
is
Maybe they wouldn't be cool with that. I don't know.
something to negotiate with them, as well as
Yeah.
because this is Avery, she'll probably negotiate some of it with the denizens. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, a path based domain feels like very fun stuff to play with, especially now. Well, we'll talk about the boon they get for the promenade later, I guess. But yeah,
Mm,
um,
yeah.
can we talk about the fact that she has a fucking Sailor Moon transformation to get into these outfits too? It was just like
Is that
so
just Avery
Avery.
that has that transformation, or does
Yeah.
everyone do that transformation? I wasn't even sure.
I feel like Avery's probably the only one who lent into it by like jumping into the air and pulling her knees into her chest and like twirling along with it. Like I can imagine like Jude or Cliff Garrett just kind of standing there and the clothes get ripped off them and new ones get put on and they kind of awkwardly do it. Whereas Avery jumped into the air and like fucking twirled around with ribbons like Sailor Moon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. And again, I think the other thing to call out here, because it'd be relevant later, is this is also where Snowdrop or Avery tries to get Snowdrop to take the job,
Mm,
and she's not allowed to. And this is the bit where they're like, "Oh, I guess Snowdrop can't just like be super clutch in this path. That sucks." And it's like,
mm.
we still find a
Stay
way
tuned
later.
for that. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Wondercand arrive with Shane and Kimber, revealing the truth to the betrayal.
Yeah. I mean, they were talked about as like high probable candidates when this mystery was introduced a couple of weeks ago, but I just didn't want to believe it. Like,
Mm.
it's the most painful betrayal answer, which is why it was always going to be the answer in retrospect. But like, it just sucks that it was
Yeah.
Shane and Kimber.
Yeah. I hope we get a scene of Shane trying to justify this later that Avery is witness to, because I am interested to hear the justification, because it's so it's
He doesn't
so
seem to have thought it through,
yeah,
has
it's
he?
really
Like,
poorly thought out, isn't it? Because the plan effectively is Shane's going to go in and fuck with them so hard that they have to bail, but like it just demonstrates a clear misunderstanding of who his family is, that they'll just kind of like I'm pretty sure that Cliff would well come pretty close to rather dying than just giving up to Wondercand here, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
um and Shane clearly doesn't want anyone to get killed because he backs down from fucking with them too much. Like I don't know, Shane, you really just goofed it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it just seemingly didn't occur to him that when the wolf showed up, they wouldn't all bail.
Mm.
And then there's this moment of he's like, "You've got to leave. The wolf is here." And they're like, "No, this is like literally everything to our family right now." And it's almost like Shane just like is processing that live. He's like, "Oh, I hadn't considered that this is that important." Like, yeah, just idiot hours
Yeah,
from Shane,
and what
basically.
I guess he's selling them out for money to Wondercand, right? But like, it just seems like it's almost certainly not going to end up being worth it. If Shane had just been like chill to the family, I'm sure he could have gotten a better payout from them. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but he was going for the easy money, right? Like, anyway, I mean, he's fucked now. Like Avery won, so play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I think is Shane's future.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so Shane fucks around. The wolf arrives and starts messing with the Garricks. A lot of them have to black rope out, but Avery and a few others start heading towards the trains.
Yeah, and I love the wolf. Like, it's just so. I mean, it's literally the antagonist, and it's a very good one. Like, because what I love is each person's wolf is like perfectly crafted to be their antagonist. But when it's in a group like this, you get the like fun. Like, it's not just saying one thing that hurts somebody. It's like trying to figure out ways to do maximum damage to the group. Like, that's just so fun. Like it's got everyone's secrets and it can dish them out to do maximum damage to everyone simultaneously.
Yeah. Peter takes a solid loss here, as does his wife. But yeah,
His
as we
wife,
mentioned,
sorry, we got quite. His wife is such a fucking champ about this though. Like
yeah, I know.
the wolf is here talking about how he still masturbates to the women who he's attracted to that are better than her, blah blah. And her response is to just be like, "Hey Peter, it's trying to distract you. Don't fall for it," which is just a huge W for her. Like the ability to hold that shit together while the wolf is saying this about your husband is huge.
Mm, yeah, yeah, for sure. It would be a tough one to just, you know, let go. But
Yeah.
well, we'll see what the impact of this is later, I guess. If I hear from Cliff that there's an impending divorce in the family, I wouldn't be too surprised, I guess.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but even then, her ability to pack the shit away while they're
yes.
in danger zone is still impressive. Like we're going to see, Cliff doesn't do quite as well
Cliff
at
does
that
not.
later.
Yes, exactly right. But yeah, so what we talked about though is the wolf tries and fails to impact Avery here. Avery is just like completely unimpacted. She does she does yell out, "Bad wolf, stay!" and throw the jets at it, which I thought was fucking hilarious.
It's so good. It's exactly the level of dignity the wolf deserves.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I guess this is some stuff we've already talked about, but this is really the section where it was becoming apparent to me how much it's the wolf it can't attack Avery directly so much anymore. And the chapter that's really sat with me between here and now is that chapter where Avery talked to Samaniego and also Janine. Because that was really, I think, the chapter that firmly established the Avery saw the wolf as not being her problem, but the problem to the people in her life. Like,
Mm,
for her, Samaniego and Janine were about attacking Nora and Clem and converting them, not about actually fighting Avery.
mm,
And that's what we see the wolf start to do here. Like, the wolf doesn't attack Avery. The wolf is like attacking the network and revealing her secrets and stuff.
yeah, yeah, definitely the way to do it. So well played, Wolf, I guess.
I guess because what I sort of want to rant about here is like obviously in Hazel's book we learnt that the Forest Ribbon Trail is only like the first of a trilogy basically that you were sort of meant to undergo. So you're meant to have this like low point where the wolf kind of beats the shit out of you, probably physically and mentally, and then there's sort of meant to be a second arc where you come to understand it better, and then a third arc where I assume you ultimately sort of defeat it. But clearly, the original people who found the Forest Ribbon Trail figured out they could just sacrifice their boon companions instead, and now everyone just chooses to forget their first encounter with the wolf. And I think this is like a huge part of why Avery is better than all these other finders at dealing with her wolf. It's because she's the only person who's come close to fighting the wolf the proper way. Like she's one of the only people who spent those hours with the wolf and remembers it. And so when the wolf starts attacking other people, we hear like Clay has a meltdown and freezes up, and like Cliff doesn't cope. Whereas like there's a moment I think later on where the wolf tries to attack Avery, and Avery's like, "We've already talked about this." Um, and like admittedly she's not as confident as she'd like in that moment, but like I think this is the thing is like she, in being one of the few people to remember the wolf and going through that trauma, is one of the few people who's kind of doing what the Forest Ribbon Trail was meant to be, which is clearly this path where you go through like a journey against your antagonist and learn how to beat your demons. And because if we remember, that's what the paths are. Like, we're told path boons are basically the universe thinking you did a way more epic journey than you did. And I think the original Forest Ribbon Trail, you were probably meant to come out of it the other end with just this superpower to like kind of not be shaken by your enemies. Like you've defeated the wolf, you've defeated the ultimate antagonist. Antagonists don't affect you so much anymore, and all the other path runners are doing it wrong, whereas Avery kind of accidentally sort of did it right. And so I think part of the reason she's immune to the wolf is because she's gone through what this journey was meant to be, which is she had that low point after her first trip to the Forest Ribbon Trail.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I do think the question of like what is special about Avery is one that we kind of get a lot these chapters, and Avery doesn't seem to think there's anything special about her, and I also am kind of inclined to agree. Like I don't think there's a big thing that makes her special, as opposed to just who
Yeah.
she is. That is like leads to all these symptoms that make it seem like she's
Well,
special.
I mean, it's the other verse, right? It's like kind of both. Like
Yeah, true, true.
the fact that she made her familiar a lost who's part of the child. So like she's permanently bonded herself to that childhood innocence vibe. Like that is what the paths are kind of about. So it's like yeah, like I think it does give her a tangible boost that other people wouldn't see, where other lost are naturally more friendly to her. But also it's because of who she is that she chose to do that thing in the first place. So it's like it's a chicken or egg problem, because it's like she's the sort of person who would do that, which means she gets the boon that makes it easier. But also, it's
Yeah,
always going to be
yeah.
easier for her because she's just that sort of person. And it's the same with like the Forest Ribbon Trail stuff. Like, I don't think it's just the fact that Avery got hounded by the wolf for hours and remembers it that has made her strong. Like, she's obviously had to put in a fuckload of other work to do it. I just think it's like like again, she had to go through that low point, and she's come out the other end stronger. Like that's made her stronger, and also it's probably a boon from the paths. Like it's both. Like the whole point of the paths is it's like I guess you kind of get it more than you maybe would somewhere else because it's like a more intense version shortcut or whatever. So yeah, it's like I agree. It's like I'm not saying that's all of it, but I think like it's not an accident that these things line up. I guess.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, the fact that Avery would not be the kind of person to sacrifice Snowdrop comes up again in this chapter, or in the next chapter, and I
Yeah,
think that's obviously kind of pivotal to it, right?
yeah, exactly, 100%.
Yeah. Um, Jude gets a good moment of being an MVP, throwing a torrent of junk at the wolf, which is fun.
Yeah, I just love lost stuff, like the shit that finders have their tools. Like this is also where Avery's using her like staple gun that I forgot just shoots out like crazy powerful staples that even cause the wolf to hesitate a bit. Um, and like that's fucking stupid. I love it. And
Yeah,
yeah,
lost trinkets are very fun, aren't they?
yeah, like yeah, it's same with a lot. Like lost stuff in general. I think it's just such a fun twist on this universe where like everything has meaning, but the lost stuff is so detached from the center of its meaning that it's all just kind of weird, dumb shit that sort of makes sense. Yeah. Also, I think from memory, that staple gun that Avery uses to hold back the wolf is one of the poppy items that they sold to her. So just nice that she's using it to counter Shane's bullshit here.
Is that nice or is it tragic?
It can be both.
Yeah, sure, both, bit of both.
Also, so this is the area where Avery, they're running away from the wolf, trying to get to the train, like you mentioned. And this is the point where Avery just starts handing out flyers for Kennet Found as a vacation spot, which I just thought was very funny because it's such a good idea, but also like the timing on this, like Avery just fucking running for her life from the wolf, but also being like, "Hey, come visit our ski town. It's great. We can give you a job."
Yeah, yeah, and seems to. I mean, it doesn't really like go anywhere crazy quickly, but it seems like it's the kind of thing that will pay off.
Yeah, again, it's that sort of thing where Avery is really coming to the promenade and treating the lost like people, and that surely just helps.
Mm, yeah. So yeah, they get on the train and they kind of get to the cakewalk, and as they're going there, they're chatting. Cliff is very angry at Avery's deception, which come on, Cliff, it's like a 1 out of 10 on the deception scale. He is firmly taken out of the camp of chill practitioners and into the camp of, oh, you're so close to not being shitty practitioners.
Yeah, I mean, should we just do all the cliff talk here?
Let's do it. The Cliff Notes.
Yeah, exactly. Like because obviously this conversation happens throughout these two
Yes,
chapters, but
there's
we may as
kind
well
of two
just
beats of it throughout
yeah,
the
may as well
next.
just address it here.
Yeah,
Oh, Cliff. I, like,
yeah.
I think you said it perfectly. Where it's like, oh, he's so like. I think the thing with Cliff is I sort of get it for him. Like this
Mm,
reminds me of conversations we used to have about Connor, kind of catching up to being like PC. Like
yeah, yeah,
it's like he's been homophobic his whole life or whatever, and I don't expect that to get cured, especially in these circumstances in an instant. Like I think where he really loses me is that he tries to start justifying why he thinks this to Avery and sort of making it like Avery needs to fix it for him. And it's like, no, no, no. Like, this is shit you need to unpack. And that's not Avery. Like, do it with someone else. Like, get
yeah.
therapy or
It's not
whatever. Like,
Avery's job.
it's not Avery's job.
Yeah,
Like, there's this bullshit apology he tries to pull later where even Avery laughs at him when he says he's trying to apologize because he's doing such a bad job of it.
yeah,
But it's like I don't know. Honest part of me is like, yeah, like I think like Connor back in the day, he kind of seems to want to do better. He just is dealing with some shit, and especially given present circumstances, I can see why it's hard to get over it right now.
mm. Yeah. Obviously, we're in some pretty rough circumstances for Cliff, and this first conversation is definitely the worst, and they get progressively better. Not perfect by the end, but better at
Yeah,
least. So it's I think it's fun to be. It's very Cliff is very disappointing at the start here, but he does walk it back a bit. So okay, Cliff,
yeah.
well done.
They're not as big a jerk as you could have been awards sort of vibes of like, yeah.
Yeah,
Like, because there's the bit where, like, he he sort of implies that deception and
Yeah,
homosexuality go
yeah,
hand in
yeah.
hand.
Which
Which,
is hilarious.
yeah, and it's like, well, I mean, yes, because that's true when you've created a homophobic environment, so people have to keep
Yeah.
who they are hidden. Like,
I like how Vice Versa put it in chat. Being gay is inherently deceptive because you have to lie to assholes like me.
yeah, exactly. Uh, but like this brings me back to my like thing where I'm not quite defending Cliff, but it's like this isn't the time or the place, or and Avery's not the person to help him unpack the shit of realizing that he's creating the environment that makes these problems.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
you know, your uncle clearly left and took all that shit because he was spiteful because you all treated him like shit. Like,
But that's the thing about that story is like even Avery kind of questions it. It feels like we're getting kind of a one-sided version of it,
yeah,
and the one-sided version we get of it is not that bad. Like he took his rightful inheritance with assuming that he had was going to have kids, right? Like that's it.
yeah,
Is
I
that
don't
so
know.
bad?
This is the thing when you mix family and business like that. There's maybe an argument to be made for the fact that if you were going to choose not to have kids or weren't going to have kids, maybe you shouldn't get the full third. Or there's probably a more nuanced argument you could have there. But I fully back this dude who's dealt with his homophobic family his whole life, being like, "Nah, fuck that. I'm taking my third and getting
Yeah,
out of Dodge."
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
like this is the thing. I think in a more progressive, communicative Garrick family, there would be room to have the discussion of, oh, well, if you're not planning to have a family or have kids or whatever, maybe you don't get some of these boons because we need those for the kids who are going to keep working for our company family. And this is what happens when you
Yeah,
mix family and business.
I mean, you
Um,
can really read the undertones of like of people who are gay shouldn't start families or shouldn't be allowed
yeah,
to, or like if gay people adopt a kid, that's not a real family, or like
exactly.
you can
Yeah.
really feel the undertones of that in there, and it's not fully explicitly addressed. So I don't know, like you can't
Yeah.
you can't come down too hard on it, but that's what it feels like the actual issue was
Yes.
behind this decision, right?
Yeah, and we see that a lot in Cliff. Like Cliff's sort of first thing when Avery's like, what can I do?" I think the first thing he suggests is, "Well, you could still marry Jude and figure out a way to have kids." And it's like, "No,
Yeah.
but like, she
Nah,
could, but she
man.
shouldn't."
Yeah.
Like, and that's what Avery says. She's like, "I'm not going to do that. That would suck for me and Jude."
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I don't know. And like, yeah, like this is the whole thing. Is like Cliff makes the problem like for him. He's like, no, the problem isn't that you're gay. The problem is that you kept lies from us, which kind of falls apart because he doesn't focus as much on the
Yeah,
max
he
of it all.
doesn't seem to care at all about the Max thing. It's
Which is like
the thing
if
that he had a problem with is in his head he had married Avery and Jude.
yeah.
Like that's it.
Like this is the thing. If he was much more focused on the Max thing and he's framing his argument about you lied to us and kept coming back to Max,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
me it would be like, okay, he's got more legs to stand on here. But like the fact that she's gay is like ends up being the main sticking point. Is like, no, okay, so homophobia is driving this.
yes.
But again, yeah, like it's just like Avery kind of wants to talk this out, and that was sort of the part where I'm like, Avery, I don't think this is a talk it out
Mm,
here
mm,
thing. Like, I think Avery ends up playing it right, which is her just sort of saying, look, I'm either here with you or I'm not. I'm gonna go sit over here, figure out whether you want me here or not. Like,
yeah,
but like we don't have time to unpack the whole shit here. And like, yeah, I hope Cliff goes from here to like, doing a Connor and getting his shit sorted. But I mean, the wolf timed it perfectly because they're not going to figure that out on this train. And I can't really blame Cliff for being able to just unthink the last 50 years of his life or whatever on this train. I
yeah,
wish he could, but yeah.
yeah.
There's also the low key misogyny worked into all this. Like Avery points out to us, she's not willing to say it, but she does point out the core team was 4 dudes, and then the backup team was mostly girls.
Mm,
And we end up getting the 50-50 split here at the end, but it's like, yeah, I mean, Avery sort of points that it's like it's very patriarchal in the Garrick family. It's like, oh, it's the three brothers who are the three heads of the family. That's why they're the first team. It's like, yeah, okay, but do we need to question why it's the three brothers who are the who are the heads of
yeah,
the family, right?
mm, yeah. No, for
Um,
sure.
Also, yeah, sorry, as a part of that, he says, "Oh, there's two girls here now," and Avery's like, "Three," like because she counts Snowdrop, and he's like,
So,
"Oh, two and a half," and then Avery's like, "That's worse, I think, that you called
well,
her
I
a
don't know
half
about
person."
that. Snowdrop is literally half girl, half possum. So,
Yeah, but she's all person. Like, I don't know. Like,
Sure, sure.
I think neglecting to count her as a practitioner is more excusable than saying that she's half a
Yes.
person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, overlooking Snowdrop is what causes Avery to to win the day in the end. So
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
fall into that trap for sure. Um, so yeah, the Garricks are kind of panicking at this point. They try to make a deal with Wondercand, but Wondercand kind of knows that it's probably just a matter of time. The Garricks can't do this. They do not account for Avery in these calculations. But yeah, so the gang kind of rides the train onto the cakewalk, and then the next chapter starts there, right?
Yeah, and like this is such a hype ending because it was like this is the thing is you're like, well, now getting back to the promenade is like the hard mode. Like the cakewalk is meant to be the hard part, but it's like, oh, we're gonna get back to the promenade, and the wolf's still gonna be there, and Wondercand is gonna
Yeah,
be there. Like
yeah.
it's such a fun way to end the chapter because it's like, oh, this just got like this was a disaster getting onto the first train, and now it's gonna get hard from here.
Yeah, yeah, that was the easy part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love, by the way, that it's. I love that the cakewalk is. It's just such a stupid name, and whoever named this path is fucking hilarious because it's a notoriously hard and find a killing path where you literally walk cake to people. So of course they called it the cakewalk, which
Do,
is just ridiculous.
do you think that was an attempt by the finders to soften the edges of it? Because, like, again, if we're talking about
Oh,
naming and
interesting.
coming up with
Yeah.
the like access to these paths, like shaping them, do you think this was a finder who was kind of aware of that? And they're like, if I call it the cakewalk, maybe it'll get easier.
I mean,
And
maybe originally it was harder. Like maybe originally there was
yeah,
the things would just kill you more or something, and now they only kill you if you misdeliver the cake. You know what I mean? Like
oh no,
this
so
could be the easier version.
my thinking was a lot more like Sangachi's, where I think maybe this person underestimated the sense of irony that the paths have, and they're like, oh, the cakewalk, let's make it even harder. Like that'll be funny.
Yeah, maybe that is good. Um, so yeah, they arrive at the cakewalk and they kind of are still arguing at this point a bit. But of course, the worst thing is Snowdrop eats Wiggle, which is horrifying, and Snowdrop is dead to me.
Oh, this is the most I've laughed at something in quite a while. Like this, uh, Avery names Wiggle, and you're just like, I will die for Wiggle now. And then immediately Snowdrop just fucking munches down on her. It's like, what the fuck are you doing, Snowdrop? So good.
Yeah, pretty rough.
Um, eh, I also want to point out, so Snowdrop chalks this up to like, oh, it's just my instincts, and Avery also explains that Snowdrop's just doing her part to like keep the mood light, which I'm
Yeah.
sure both of those things are true. But another part of me was like, can't help but notice that you ate this firefly after Avery gave her new lost animal companion a cute name.
Oh, it's
Like,
jealousy, you think?
yeah, do we think there's a little bit of a protective, jealous angle to the Snowdrop deciding to pull this joke right here, right now? That's
Could
my
be.
headcanon.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Uh, Especially because, unlike Snowdrop, Wiggle got the first and best name that it wanted, whereas Snowdrop was like the fourth or fifth best option from memory.
Mm. Yeah, but I can't imagine what else Snowdrop would be called. I think Snowdrop is
She's
perfect.
really settled into it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it works. Um,
Um,
the other thing, sorry, that was going on is because this is a whole like as Adoria calls out, this is a fucking comedy routine that like Avery starts trying to literally force Snowdrop's mouth open, like you have to do when a cat eats something bad. And I just couldn't help but think as this was going down, I was like, this must be a real like never meet your hero moments for the Garrick. Like Cliff has already just been bitching about how they wanted her to be their Hazel and stuff, and it's like just to like what would this have been like for the Garrick? So it's like this is our Hazel. She's one quarter of our only chance of winning this path over Wondercand, and she's wrestling with her opossum to get a firefly out of its mouth. We're
mm.
fucked. Like,
Yeah, I mean, fair enough from the Garricks, huh?
yeah,
She is ridiculous. So yeah, they're kind of arguing and doing their comedy routine. But then, yeah, Giselle arrives. She is the COO of Wondercan Security with her wolf in tow.
and both of her memory hammers.
Hmm.
I think the most horrifying thing here is we learn that there's an entire sea level suite just for security. Like she's not COO of Wondercand, she's COO of security at Wondercand.
Yeah, which
So
means they probably do
presumably,
a lot of fighting on paths.
yeah, but it also presumably means that other departments have their own C-level suite. And then there's presumably like people on top of that. I don't know, just particularly with stuff that's been going on at my work this week. This was the most horrifying part of all the chapters to me was the just the bureaucratic corporative stuff going on at Wondercand.
Yeah, I guess that's horrifying. um, so yeah, the fun thing to me about Avery finding out that Giselle has the wolf is Avery's immediate reaction is, "Oh, that must be so unpleasant." Like
Yeah.
meeting of clearly who was going to be a villain of of this chapter. Avery's immediate response is empathy, and it's just so classic Avery, right?
Yeah, because my response when we found this out is I was like, "But why? Why have you done this? You're an idiot." Whereas Avery's like, "Oh, you poor thing." Like she's just such a good bean.
Yeah, it's
Um,
very fun.
like yeah, and because why? Like this thing's literally an antagonist. It's such a wild choice to be like, "Yes, I will take the embodiment of antagonism and bond myself to it for life for the money." Like she says, she's like, "This isn't a picnic, but the power and the money make up for it." And I was like, "Jesus, what a victim of capitalism."
Yeah, a victim and a perpetrator, and that's
Well,
the
yeah,
joy of capitalism. Is
yeah,
that
that's
a lot of
those
both?
often overlaps. Yeah. Like, and I mean, this is really fun as well because it immediately sets Giselle up as this fun anti Avery. Like she's such a great face to stick on Wondercand as villains because it's
Yeah,
like she's bonded to the wolf. Avery's kind of bonded to her section of the child. Like they're such antitheses of each other. It's a very fun rival. Like, I hope Giselle stays as kind of the face of Wondercand as villains because she's the anti Avery in so many ways. She's perfect.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, she really is.
And yeah, just also again, wild that she has the wolf as her familiar, not just from a like that's a stupid idea position, but also how she pulled it off. Like she explains that she had this mirror and you can just like suck a portion of someone out in their reflection and then
Mm,
like keep it in the mirror. Like
mm.
that's a wild power. You could do way cooler things with the ability to pull a chunk out of someone and stick it in a mirror, I would have thought.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, this is a pretty wild thing to do.
Yeah, I just can't get over that it's like you have the ability to pull part of something out, stick it in a mirror, and you chose to use it on the wolf.
Mm, yeah,
Anyway.
I guess. You're right. It's a weird way to apply it. You would think there'd be a better way to do it. Or, I mean, I guess this is the Giselle way of doing it, right? Like, I'm sure Avery would find a more wholesome way to do this.
Yeah, that just seems like an insanely powerful power that you could do some insane stuff with, but she used it to tie herself to the antagonist of her life.
Yeah. Yeah. Something fun that happens here that I thought was really good as well is obviously in the back of our mind, we have the Milton appointment that has been set up. And I love that Wildbow just immediately is like, no, this is not going to be a factor in this
Yeah.
because Giselle's like, Milton can fuck off, basically. And it's wonderful.
I do wonder if now Giselle will make time to drop by for that meeting. You know what I mean? Like it's like if
Yeah.
Avery.
Is Giselle dead at the end of this
Oh,
chapter?
there's no way. I mean, she gets chucked off the path, but we see that happens to her here in the cakewalk too. There's no way Giselle
Yeah.
is not coming
Yeah.
back. She's
Yeah. Fair
too
enough. She's got too many
perfect.
tricks, doesn't she?
Yeah, like she's been set up to be that powerful, and she's also just too fun to be dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that like I can totally see now when Avery finally goes to have a chat with Milton, Giselle pulls some shit where she's like, "We need security for this meeting. I'd better be here too." Like there's no way she doesn't get in trouble at Wondercand as the head of like second in command of security. Presumably, she was on point to make sure the Garricks didn't win this. So I'm assuming it's bad for her performance review here. So you feel like I feel like she's gonna specifically hate Avery now, and that's gonna be fun. Like the
Yeah.
rivalry's only just beginning here. I can't
Yeah,
wait.
or will it be a kind of business? I feel like it's gonna be like a business rivalry. I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
see. We'll see.
yeah, same shit for her though, right? Like her job is to work with the wolf. Like this is, it's all the same for her. But yeah, so I reckon she's gonna do what she can to crash this meeting with Milton, and that will be fun. Also,
Mm.
just like because poor Milton is now like he agreed to meet with this girl who he thought was kind of wacky, and now she's the girl who beat Giselle. Like I wonder what they think of Avery over at Wondercand.
Yeah, Yeah, that Milton appointment definitely is going to be more important. I reckon. We'll see.
Yeah.
So yeah, they start the cakewalk, and the goal of the cakewalk is to serve guests cake in order, which you have to kind of figure out from the coats and shoes and who's piled on top of who and all this stuff.
It's
It
like
does
those
seem very rough.
awful it's those awful logic puzzles. You know the
Yeah,
ones where it's
yeah,
like, if red comes before blue, but then, blue
yeah.
like, I just
But way worse.
I suck at those things, and also you die like, I just if I ended up on the cakewalk, I'd just be immediately escape roping, like, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I'd be so dead. Yeah, I suck at those kind of logic puzzles, and, life or death wouldn't make that better.
Fair
Um,
enough.
but yeah, I think this is really fun because it's like we don't know what the cakewalk involves. Like we're really learning as it happens. I always love paths where Avery kind of comes in and she only sort of knows it by theory. So it's like we're kind of along for the ride where Avery's like, oh, so I think the next thing is we have to do something like this, and it's just like, oh god, that's even harder than I would have expected. Like I just love being on the ride for paths like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Um,
so we also see that there's no rot here, so all the bodies are just of all the dead finders, there's like 80 dead finders are just like stuffed in various points around, just which is such a baller move to like I don't know, show off by the cakewalk. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is good. Yeah, we get the vibe of how dangerous the cakewalk is, and that's so fun because it sets up so perfectly Giselle's shenanigans later. I think it's great.
Yeah. Which in turn sets up the shenanigans of Wondercan as a whole on the promenade after that. Yeah, I actually I love the cakewalk as well as this kind of so like for me the promenade as a path represents making a finder walk a mile in a lost's shoes. Like I very much see the promenade as a finder proving that they can live like a lost. Like you have to follow all these weird patterns. There's a bunch of rules. You get assigned random jobs that transform you and who you are. You transform, you have to get like forced onto other paths for a bit. Like this is all shit that Lost suffer all the time as in the like, grand machine of the paths. So it
Mm,
feels like this really empathetic take on finding to me where the promenade is asking a finder to prove that they can walk a mile in a lost's shoes to get the boon.
mm,
And what's fun is the cakewalk is adjacent to it. I'm assuming that's why it's the prominent path that you go and visit
yeah.
in this sort of two-step like journey. And the cakewalk is like the opposite, like where the promenade is kind of empathetic and saying, "Prove to us that you can walk in our shoes." The cakewalk is like, "Do a bunch of random bullshit, and if you stuff it up at all, we'll fucking gut you." Like it's both the same and totally different to the promenade. It's like this is the place where
Mm,
lost can gather and have a party, and it's nice, but also yeah, like it's nice for them and it punishes the finders. It's about strong arming finders, whereas the promenade feels more inviting and like, try living our lives for a bit. This is the mean streak of the paths.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. It's a good point. There's a fun connection between them.
Yeah. Like and we see that like the promenade is kind of designed, I think, to encourage finders to go in and experiment and learn how it works and see the world. Like the promenade invites you in, quite literally, thanks to the way the Garricks have set it up. Whereas the cakewalk, something Avery calls out is it specifically inverts a lot of the standard rules. Like the entryway isn't really safe. The big sort of boss you meet right at the start, so there's potential to die right at the start. Like it seems designed from the ground up to punish and hurt and trick finders. So it's so similar to, but yet the complete opposite of the promenade. And I love that it's like a step in the promenade.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Definitely.
Especially because something Avery points out to us here is that like it is really common for paths to have these sort of big final boss others. Like I've sort of taken to calling them avatars, but like the wolf on the Forest Ribbon Trail or the cake lady here on the cakewalk, like most big paths have a soot sleeves. But I noticed the promenade doesn't, seemingly. Like I
Mm,
think the
mm,
closest the promenade has is the wolf, but obviously the wolf is mainly the Forest Ribbon Trail, and also the wolf feels as against the promenade as it is part of it. So I think it's really fun that like the promenade feels much more like I don't know egalitarian or democratic as a path. It just is for all the lost, kind of, even the wolf.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a thing about how I don't know, like formed a path is that impacts whether it has a you know an avatar.
Yeah, I think
I
there
th-
is. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Then I'm thinking of ones like Zoomtown, and they don't all quite fit that, do they?
No, like it's not. It's far from a universal thing, but I feel like there's probably a reason some have it. Like because I think we only learn in this chapter that the Watched Way is one of the ones that has one. I don't think we knew that
Yeah,
there was a big boss watcher the last
no.
time we went. So
Falling Oak Avenue also doesn't have one, right?
it does. It has apparently the teacher counts, the teacher of
Oh,
the
okay,
mean
okay,
students.
yeah,
That gets called out in this chapter, I think.
fair enough.
I mean, part of it I see it
Can
as
from Kick Can Alley, yeah, anyway.
I've definitely seen it as like I see the paths as all little baby realms that are growing up, and so for me, I think these avatars or the big boss others are kind of a vessel for the consciousness of the realm to sit in. And I've talked about this at length in other spaces, so I won't repeat it all here. But like I do think that there's a correlation between a path growing and it getting one of these avatars. But clearly, some of them don't need it, like Zoomtown. So I don't know what the pattern is there, but yeah, I do think we've seen Soot Sleeves is kind of her path, like regardless of where she is, like she is the kingdom, she is the path to a degree. So I
Mm.
think the same would be true of something like the teacher or the watcher, or I know they're not called the watcher, but Magnus Archives has ruined me. That it's something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I definitely think the fact that there are avatars on some paths is probably important to something. I just don't know exactly what.
Yeah, there'll be
Um,
a pattern there for sure.
yeah. So yeah, they are delivering cake, but Giselle and the wolf kind of get fed up with all the rules and just start smashing their way through, and it's bullshit.
And sorry, I just need to call it. Todd was here. Fucking what a blast from the past Todd was. The fucking guy wanted to lay eggs in Avery. That was just a fun. I enjoyed seeing him again.
Yeah,
S-
fun guy to come back. Fun cameo.
Still seems like he's a massive asshole, but whatever.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so Giselle and her wolf are so strong they can just kind of fight their way through every single other. It's absolutely bullshit.
Especially because like this is the find a killer path, and we find out here what that means is it's full of 50 of the deadliest others, all lost. Like it, and they're divided into sections to where the ones who enjoy killing, the ones who enjoy killing ritually, like the ones
Yeah.
who just kill because they're kind of mandated to, but they'll do it. Like it's like Giselle gets dropped in a room with 50 different flavors of serial killer and is like, I'm just going to beat the shit out of them. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bullshit. I do love this bit where, as they're prepping to escape, Avery, we get the Avery's going to pull some shenanigans. We get Avery stepped back, tapping her foot 3 times. She flashed a smile at Giselle, mostly to try and throw off the game. And I think we all know this is Avery flirting with Giselle. This isn't trying to throw her off her game.
Yeah. Well, the best of relationships can start out as rivalries in this world. We've heard that before.
Mm,
Yeah, I don't know. God, you've gone from shipping Avery and Janine to Avery and Giselle, which Giselle feels like Janine but worse. So at least you're consistent, Ruben.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I only ship the worst for Avery.
Yeah. God, at this moment though, flirting aside, I just thought it was so funny that Avery tries to throw a smile at her to like throw her off her game because that's so otherverse protagonist. Like, I love that she's like, yeah, like we're playing these fucking mind games. Like, there's no way that didn't win her points with the spirits. That's so fucking extra.
It is very extra. But yeah, so they escape from the cakewalk, and Cliff finally kind of apologizes for being a piece of shit. Kind of.
He does
They
his
go,
best.
yeah, they get back to the promenade, then to the Watched Way, and then kind of head back to the promenade again for the final showdown.
Yeah, and I really like that. Like these train rides are almost the rest period you get along the promenade, but
Yep.
because Wildbow's a cruel master, he doesn't really let Avery just get to use it for a bit of recharge. Like this really turns into not just like strategizing stuff for the group, but like this is where, like as we mentioned, there are sort of these three conversations with Cliff. and it's all on these train rides. And I think that that's really fun because if we're going with the idea that like Avery's wolf now is about attacking her network rather than her because she's grown strong enough to not really care herself, like the fact that Avery uses these train rides to keep her relationship with the Garricks alive despite all the shit the wolf has thrown at them, like this is where she really kind of beats the wolf. I think is like she gets Cliff to basically do his best to apologize, but also admit that like he needs to work with it. Like, so I love that these train rides are almost the most important part of running the path, really, because this is where Avery defeats the shit that the wolf threw at them by keeping her relationship with Cliff alive.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. I don't know. Cliff walks it back, and it's good. And thumbs up, Cliff.
Yeah, but like I guess yeah, this is the thing, right? Like I see the Avery defeating the wolf is less about her overpowering it, although she does sort of do that later too. She gets both, but yeah, for me, Avery defeating the wolf is not letting it break her networks because as long as people are good, she will keep them together, and that's what she manages to do with Cliff here. It's still very much a work in progress, but she gets Cliff to realize that he's being a dumb shit and he needs to pack it away and
Yeah, yeah,
like work with her for now. Like she is on his side, and like yeah, she manages to do that, and that's kind of why they win. Like Cliff saves her from the wolf a couple of times, and it's the only reason she gets enough of an edge to pull her shit with Snowdrop later. Like, yeah, these train rides not just being a rest, but Avery's time to get Cliff to pull his head out of his ass is why she defeats the wolf, and I think that's so yeah, but it's such a good idea to introduce these train rides and not just let them be a rest, but be Avery's chance to do what she does best, which is get people to be better.
yeah. It's classic Avery. Um, so yeah, yeah, it's nice that yeah. I guess it's nice they rekindle a bit and they head back into the final showdown. More aligned. But yeah, getting back at the promenade, it's effectively a full out war. Wondercand is just kind of fighting their way through all of these smiling and non-smiling others.
Yeah, it's when we realize that this isn't just a Giselle thing. Apparently, they'll
No,
just happily brute force
it's
it
the
as a
way.
group.
Yeah,
And again, like I love this because if the point of the promenade is to practice walking a mile in a lost's shoes, like I think it is, what better way to summarize Wondercan than them looking at that and going, "Yeah, we can just beat the shit out of you all until we get to the end anyway." Like this path has been set up to be like, try living the way we do, and Wondercan's just like, "Ah, we can just beat you, or we can just beat it past you. Like we don't need to do that." Like that's no wonder the page fucking hates these guys.
yeah, yeah. Fair enough. Um, we get Piss Guy, who is great. Avery uses him as a piss jetpack, recoloring tiles to fuck with Wondercand, and it's very ridiculous.
It's such a clutch moment for Avery to sort of be like, "Oh, him covering a tile in piss counts as it being yellow now." Because that's probably the most powerful thing they learn throughout this whole thing is that like
Yeah,
because the restrictions on movement are probably one like the main obstacle of the promenade, really. So like
yeah,
yeah, exactly. The Splatoon piss guy is an absolutely clutch find because you turn the whole thing into one tile. Like you're not counting as walking on tiles. Like this is yeah, and of course Avery immediately gets him on board with helping her.
mm. Yeah, yeah. I wonder if anyone is there something special about Piss Guy's piss, or do you think
Yeah.
anyone is this just a secret trick that
Well,
anyone could do in the promenade?
could you get Verona's new modem that bleeds and spread its
Yeah,
blood everywhere and make them
yeah.
all red tiles?
Like, is Piss Guy's special power just the volume of piss,
Yeah,
or is
or
it
be like,
special?
would anyone's piss work? Could I charm myself to just endlessly piss, and would my piss make everything gold, and then I can just walk?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Like, does he have special piss? Yeah, these are the
Interesting.
questions we
These
need
are the
we
kinds of
need answers.
questions we need bonus materials for. Um. Anyway, yeah, cool. So, yeah. I mean, we've talked about this a bunch, but like Avery is so clearly perfectly tied to the promenade already. Of course, she's going to be the one to win because it's like the whole thing is helping others, and that's just exactly what she's like. I don't know. It's perfect.
Yeah, well, like Avery, I think does so because again, like if this is the path that wants you to walk a mile in a lost shoe, Avery starts doing that, and she finds ways to help them in the meantime. Like with the piss guy, she doesn't just use him as a jetpack to screw over Wondercand, which he likes anyway, but she also then like gives him the tarp, which allows him to control himself better anyway. Like she finds the other lost who were trying to fuck with Wondercand, and she's like, "Hey, you guys want to like help me like fuck with Wondercand?" Like she comes here and she doesn't just walk the mile in the lost shoes. She's also still coming out here and making friends and like helping them along the way. Like it's just of course she did so well.
Mm, yeah, it's like perfectly designed. But yeah, so Giselle is here again. They have a showdown, which Giselle wins through the wolf grabbing Avery and throwing her off the edge.
And choking her out. Like I remember
Yeah,
Anthem doing something like this to Lucy in their fight, and that's just Walbo really makes the pain of getting choked out like something you feel when this is happening to the Kedateers. I don't like it.
yeah,
It's so intense.
yeah. It's rough, isn't it? I do love this bit where the wolf offers to let Avery win in exchange for Snowdrop, and of course Avery refuses in a situation that I'm sure a lot of finders would not refuse. It's just
Yeah, well,
great. It's just so good.
I'm not gonna lie, and I think Verona would have my back on this, but like there would have been the quarter of a second where I considered it, right? Like, like
Mm,
if that offer got put to me while I'm being choked and I'm like a millimeter away from the end, there would have been just that split second where I thought about it before I pulled back. Avery doesn't even have that; she's just immediately like the idea of losing Snowdrop to her is just like an immediate no.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's great.
yeah, sorry, something I forgot to call out actually. Like as we're getting into this section is as Avery's hopping off the train for the last time, she compares this to being like the big final in a sports tournament. Like this is the thing she spent months on it, and like I really loved that comparison because I really felt that. Like it's been a long time since I did any competitive sports and stuff. But yeah, at school when we had finals, when I would drive 6 hours for a swim meet or something, like as you're standing on the starting blocks or whatever, like you really feel the weight of those months and like for some people you crumble, for others like you do better or whatever. But it's such a perfect sports metaphor for Avery. She overdoes the sports metaphor sometimes, but this one I was like, no, this is actually extremely appropriate.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I think so.
And then Connor compares it to the finale of
Of the
the
singing
singing shows,
shows.
which I
Yeah,
also think is a spot on comparison, but is also just a great piss take for Avery.
yeah, yeah. It's hilarious. um. So yeah, yeah. The wolf is kind of fucking with Avery. There's nothing they can do. Avery's thrown off the edge, and then Avery is a fucking baller, right? She makes a glowing air rune with the fireflies, flipping herself back up to the platform. She kicks Giselle off the promenade and faces the wolf again, and it's just like a fucking mad move. It's awesome.
It's yeah. Going from the wolf choking you out and tossing you to like coming back glamour kicking Giselle. Yeah, what a fucking beast.
Yeah, it's spectacular. The fireflies really saving the day. It's so great. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I really hope we get to see Giselle again because, as I already mentioned, I want to see her be really shitty about how this affected her performance review.
Yeah. So yeah, then Avery wins. Snowdrop makes it to the end and they claim the promenade and the wolf backs down and they kind of head in to find their rewards.
Yeah, and it's just we alluded to this earlier. It's so perfect that this win comes from Snowdrop, like because the setup for Snowdrop in these two chapters was at first we found out she couldn't do the jobs for Avery, so there's this thing of like, oh damn it, Snowdrop isn't recognized as a full finder
Yeah.
for this path. That's unfortunate. But then we start to see how Snowdrop can be useful because she is this weird blind spot for the wolf. Like that is seeded that the wolf doesn't quite get Snowdrop, and there's like some child wolf stuff involved in there. But it all culminates in this moment where Avery is able to use the fact that Snowdrop is this blind spot to get Snowdrop to the end, and then claim that no, but she counts. We're the same. Like I've finished too now, and the wolf has to let her go. And it's such a like again, I see the child as being one of the central architects for the paths because they are about whimsy and innocence. Innocence with a little I guess. I need to specify in this universe, but like, yeah, so what better way to defeat the wolf than using your your segment of the child to beat it. It's perfect.
Mm, yeah, yeah, it's fantastic. What a fantastic finale. Yeah, and then it leaves Avery in a very interesting position, which we get a bit of a hint of kind of information in next chapter, but like it's just kind of Avery's life now, right? Like,
Yeah, this is just something she does now.
yeah,
Um,
she is Hazel 2.0. It's
yeah,
kind of confirmed.
I love that she spends a bunch of this being like, Cliff, stop calling me your Hazel, like blah blah blah, and it's like 20 minutes later, she's opening this door to fucking four constructs. Like, not doing yourself any favors on the don't treat me like your Hazel front there, Avery.
Mm,
But yeah, no, she this is you're right, this is just something she does now. She fights jacked up wolves.
yeah, yeah.
God, I can't wait to see. I don't know if we're gonna see more of these constructs much in the story. There's definitely some seeds planted next chapter that we should assume that, this is a long project, so it might be at the scope of this story, but it's definitely it's fun.
Yeah,
And kind of
yeah,
makes you sleep. Sorry, on the actual boon they seem to have gotten from the promenade, which is any door can kind of turn into a thing to a random path, which is a huge boon.
yeah. We don't know exactly. I mean, Cliff is like, oh, is it just when you're on a path? Is it just when you finished a path? I don't know. Like, yeah, who knows? But it could be very powerful.
Yeah, because even if it's just on the paths, I mean, if you end up
Yeah,
somewhere like the stuck in place, fucking
yeah.
no worries. Yeah, and like if it's if like maybe it's optional off the paths. Like, what'd be great is if they managed to build charms that turn it on outside
Mm,
the paths. Like
mm,
Avery's ability to be stuck in a room and just be like, nope, like I'm going to some rando path now. Like that's yeah, that'd be huge.
yeah.
And it's also such a sensible reward for the promenade. Like this place that makes you travel to other paths and like is a central hub. Of course, its boon is related to just letting you go wherever.
Yeah, letting you travel around between paths, of
Yeah,
course.
Sengachi pulls out what I was just about to say as well, which is like it's such a perfect path runner boon. Like because the difference between path runners and finders is finders are more like the Garricks. They're here to try and find something that they can bring back, whereas Avery's a path runner. She's just out there for shits and gigs.
Yeah,
Um, and what better way than to do something like Hazel as a path runner and just go on an epic journey than have this ability to just hop, skip, and jump between various paths?
yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean that's the end of 20.2. Do you think we're gonna have time to adequately dive into all this shit in the rest of the story? I feel like this stuff at the midpoint of the paths is I don't know is just not like when can we cover this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we've
We've
said
said
that
that
before,
before. I know.
Ruben. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this stuff in 20.3 with Verona, like explaining to Connor that they may not really understand these things for decades, felt like the story kind of at least preparing us for the idea that it won't be covered in this story. Like, I can definitely see what we just saw as being the finale for the promenade, in this story at least,
Mm,
where it feels like Avery kind of got her moral victory over the wolf. We got to the end of the promenade. We got this big mystery set up, but that could be like I was sure we weren't done with the promenade after arc 10, and I've spent 10 arcs being like, we'll be back there one day. This time I could see it going either way, but I feel like the story has prepared us for the option of it not being a thing.
mm, yeah, yeah. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But let's get into 23, shall we? We're back with Verona. Verona and Connor are hanging out. Connor's checking in on her and getting the lowdown on how she and Kenneth are doing in exchange for helping her with her homework.
Yeah, and he's also definitely just here to get that massive info dump on what the fuck these constructions are, which is very fun tinfoil in material.
Yeah, yeah. Um, they're a good combo. The homeschooled
Yes,
kid and the homeschooling parent, they really pair well together. So it's good stuff.
yeah. I think I remember us calling it because there was a point where Connor and Verona were kind of like vibing and playing off of each other, like right after the awarenting first happened. And I remember us calling out that it seemed like those two would actually kind of get on, and we're really sort of seeing the delivery on that here a few arcs later, where it's like, yeah, Connor and Verona just very much have similar vibes in some ways, and they can really like do good for each other, especially since Connor like has dealt with like Declan, who's as destructible as Verona can be, and he's quite good at like keeping her on task.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
I know Lexi brought up in our reflecting episode earlier this week that they definitely seem to think Verona has ADHD, and I don't know if that's confirmed or anything. I'm like the opposite of a like qualified to comment on that, but
Mm,
she's definitely in that ballpark of like gets caught up and distracted and stuff, and so like it's some of the same skill sets for on Connor's end at least.
yeah. Um, yeah.
I also really like the way Connor like engages with Verona here. Like Verona brings up her thing, which I remember having this revelation towards the end of my schooling, like a lot later than Verona, but like this idea of, oh, are these textbooks kind of biased? Like we're talking
Mm,
about how great Canada was here and there. Like I remember learning about the Vietnam War in high school and coming out of it with this idea that Australia just absolutely were great and kicked ass in the Vietnam War. And I do not think that anymore. But that's what the textbooks make you think, and Verona's already sort of cottoning onto that, and Connor's response is just, "Well, go figure it out." Like it's such a perfect response for someone like Verona. He's like, "Well, if that interests you, go learn about it."
yeah.
Like yeah, I just love that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Like
you're right.
because I think if someone's problem is, I think there might be a bias here. I do think that the wrong response is to then answer it with what your opinion is, because that's
Hmm.
injecting your bias, whether it agrees or not. So I love that Connor's thing is, if you think there's bias, go out there and find the stuff that says the opposite and make the
Yeah.
decision for yourself.
Challenge yourself. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is not what Verena wants to hear. She wants to hear what's the easy answer.
No, I disagree. I think Verona does what I think if he just started spouting out his own opinion, Verona probably would have been like, "Yeah, but that's your opinion," and they would have ended up there eventually. But I think, yeah,
Mm,
I don't know. Well, yeah, like for we know Verona loves to dig into this shit. It's just usually it's practice stuff.
mm,
Connor's just
mm.
encouraging her to treat her schoolwork with the same level of enthusiasm.
Yeah, yeah. um, so yeah, that then we're kind of this chapter kind of jumps around a little bit. So we next jump to a scene where Zed and Nina are being welcomed to Verona's domain, and they meet kind of the regular hangers on here, including Blank Shanks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Nina's so it's so fun seeing Nina, but Blank Shanks really steals the scene. I would have thought when I started this scene that I would have been all about Nina, but Blank Shanks is just such a delightful little shit cunt. Like he just steals it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's very funny. Uh, Blank Shanks is great, and we'll get to that more, I guess. But I also love Nina's kind of snark at Verona's failure to organize her books in any real way.
What my understanding is that she does have an organization, but Nina comes in with this energy of like, "Oh, this is cute, like baby's first attempt to sort stuff." Like,
Hmm.
like I love that moment where Verona apologizes and Nina just completely misses what she's apologizing for. It's like, "Oh, it's all right. You're just starting off. I can teach you to sort good." And then her and Zed have the conversation about like, to what degree do you indulge Nina on this?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
it's very funny.
I mean, clearly the solution is just get Nina to work here full time, but or probably not full time. I don't think Nina needs to be traveling to get other books too. But yeah, it clearly
Yeah,
just bring Nina in on the regular is the clear answer to this.
yeah. um, So yeah, Zed has brought some gifts, two weird modems to choose from, each with their own annoyance. And so, obviously, our discussion question for this fortnight is: which of these modems would you pick? No, which of these modems would you pick? So there's the first modem which sometimes spooks you, and the second modem which bleeds and clogs drains.
And so it's worth pointing out, it's not just like spooks, like those old YouTube videos with jump scares. It's like really graphic, awful stuff.
Mm,
And I make that clarification because I do want to point out that it's still my choice. I'd still choose the spooky gross one over the blood one. I think I'd just forget to clean up the blood one, and I don't know that I do a good job of cleaning it up in the first place. Like I don't know. It sounds like so much effort cleaning it. I'd rather just get shown horrific shit every couple of hours.
mm.
Also, that's like a good alarm clock. Like you can twist that into a bit of a boon by like, I spend too much time on my computer and sometimes I'll be on here for like 4 hours and not notice.
Mm.
And some weird shit happening every 60 minutes would be a great like reminder that I need to go do something else for a bit.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess it's kind of like a Pomodoro technique.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the world's worst Pomodoro. It scares you every hour, so that reminds you,
Yeah.
oh, that block of time's up. Let's go do the next thing.
Exactly, but, like, because I tried Pomodoro once and it didn't work because it was like I would just silence it and ignore it, and that's harder to do if it's like, old people genitalia covered in fruit juice or whatever the example was, you know?
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
like, that's just gonna break my concentration so thoroughly that there's no point trying to get it back anyway. What about
yeah.
you? What's your pick?
I think I would pick number two. Although I do like your vibe for number one, I would pick neither of them. I would just buy a normal modem
Yeah, yes.
and pay for
Use the
internet.
profit
Sorry,
use the
Verona.
profits from your bookshop to just
Yeah,
buy internet,
just
yeah.
buy internet. It's not worth it.
I mean, that's obviously the answer is number 3, just get regular internet, but, like,
Yeah,
out
yeah,
of the 2.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, the the bleeding and clogging drains one, Verona is going to try and figure out a use for it, which we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, she is in the position where she can get a goblin to be the one who cleans up after it, which is like that's a positive binding vibe of like, so this thing spits out gross blood and hair and stuff that will clog drains. My goblin can handle that. Like that makes sense to me.
Mm,
Like someone to handle it. And I do love how her initial pitch is like, well, I can use the blood to in rituals and stuff, and Zed has to explain to her that like, no, it's shit blood. But also these sorts of devices are the ones where if you figure out a way to turn the price into a boon, it sounds like he's suggesting the price will change because the whole point is the spirits don't want you getting shit for free.
mm,
So the price needs to be negative. Like it reminds me of when Biscuit was getting really mad because some of the foundlings were into the negative side of her drinks. Like
yeah.
I just remember her trying to sell them drinks and then being like, and she'd say how terrible they are, and they're like, "Oh, I like that part too," and her being
Yeah.
like, "No, no, that's not the point though. You can't like that part." And I wonder if it's because yeah, like it makes the drink less effective if the price isn't as bad for you.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. It has to have a negative, or else there's like an imbalance and an
Yeah,
abuse of the universe.
exactly. Like it does make sense that these sort of artifacts, if the price becomes a boon, they figure out a way to extract some kind of price because otherwise various practitioners would just be able to hack like infinite positive feedback loops out of, weird cursed shit.
Mm, yeah. Um, so yeah, Zed and Verona continue to chat, and Zed kind of opens up about a few things, including his family, but also the fact that he's probably going to be leaving the region, which is tragic. And I hope they kill Charles soon so that it doesn't happen.
Yeah. It's like it's the thing that like he explains it and I was like, well, yeah. Like, Ray's been forced to leave. Muster and all the other business has dried up. Like he can't afford to stay here. Like it makes sense. But you're
Hmm.
right, which is why I hope that we deal with this Charles problem so that he doesn't have to anymore.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also like there's also obviously the big family talk they have here, where like Zed can. I mean, Verona is like the perfect person to unload on this sort of. I hate my family, and also I kind of get a bit resentful when Bree has a good one, and I also don't think they're good. Like it's just she is the sort of person you can have that conversation with. Like Zed, kind of right from the start, is like, I think you'll get this,
Mm,
and that's right. But I also just couldn't help but notice like this is just what Verona's domain is. Like this feels like the micro version of what people like Macaulay did. Like Zed comes to the domain because he needs to run away from the world a bit, opens up, gets a bit of help fixing his problems, leaves a bit happier than when he came in. Like that's what it's this is the halfway home house on half street sort of vibe. Like I do think the fact that this was in Verona's domain made it a bit easier for him to open up about it.
yes, for sure. This is definitely the vibe that Verona is cultivating. Is come to this domain if you're somewhat ostracized from parts of society, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, just escape from it for a bit so you can process shit and
Yeah,
then go back
yeah,
out. Yeah, and this is yeah the less extreme version of Macaulay needing to stay here for 6 weeks or whatever the fuck it was. Yeah,
yeah.
which we haven't got any updates on her since we haven't really gotten updates on anyone outside Kennett since Mossa collapsed.
Yeah, got a lot to catch up on. I'm
Yeah, we
very
talked
eager to
about
see what happens with Raquel for sure.
we talked about this with Lexi, right? Like, there's obviously
Yes.
Raquel,
Yeah.
Anthem came up in that too. And now I just want to add Macaulay to the list.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so yeah, we get a fun scene where Blank Shanks is caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Verona catches and embarrasses him as his owner pops by to buy a book.
Oh, you love to see it. Like, he's just such a smarm. I hate this cat. I really hate this cat.
Mm,
So I loved how, because he is a fairy and a cat, Verona punishes him with things that annoy cats, and also they've got goblin snot on them. Like,
mm,
I thought that was so funny that she really does great, like, negative binding stuff here. It's like finds the perfect way to fuck with blank shanks.
yeah. Yeah, it's very funny. Because yeah, Blank Shanks is both kind of fey and a cat, and is taken down in the way that you would take down a cat with very silly tape stuck to his paws.
With goblin snot on him. Like, yeah,
Yep,
perfect.
very good.
Yeah. Yeah, like he just anyway, the level there where she's also like, you either keep suffering like this or you agree to do some work for me, and he agrees, and then we find out the person coming was Mrs. Schaff, who would have saved him if he hadn't agreed. So it's like she played him so perfectly, which is just the cherry on top, because that's the kind of fairy manipulation bullshit. So she like made him suffer as a cat, made him suffer as like a fairy, from the goblin side, and then also outplayed him on the fairy side just to really rub salt in the wound. Like,
Mm,
yeah. Every perceivable angle she beat the shit out of Blank Shanks, and he deserved it, and you'll love to see it.
yeah, yeah. It's very funny.
She calls him as bad as Taddy. Oh,
Yes, which is,
that was
and then
great.
justifies it perfectly. It's very
So
good.
good.
So yeah, Verona finds a potential new friend from Mal. That's very fun.
Yeah. Mal comes through.
Yeah,
Like,
Mal makes up for the Appaloosa debacle.
yeah, it's one of these things where I'm continuing to love how Mal is still like, Mal has become such this great poster child for Verona's whole shtick in the Undercity of pulling the good stuff out of the bad, because Mal's still very much her same shit stirring pain in the ass self. Like, the first thing that we see her do here is Mal has realized Verona is getting a bit tired and wants people to leave, so Mal quickly runs around and stimulates like great conversation so that people won't leave, so that she can justify them all staying the night. Like, she's still very much a piece of shit pain in the ass. But
Yep.
under it all, she's coming a lot better at like being one who cares,
Yeah.
and like, I guess, expressing that care. Like, she calls out here that it's like she realizes she fucked up with Appaloosa, so she went looking for this guy to make up for it. And like, I don't think that part of things is something she would have been comfortable doing a few months ago. Like, Verona has not fundamentally changed who Mal is, but like fed the parts of her that are good.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
I also love how Anselm is introduced to us, because like, it's like Verona introduces this guy and she's like, yeah, it's like, oh, he's not traditionally attractive, like his mouth has this funny shape and blah blah blah, and then like two sentences later, Verona is like, thinks to herself, yeah, I like the shape of his mouth, blah blah. And I was like, oh yeah, of course. Like, we get introduced to this guy and Verona kind of points out how non-conventionally attractive he is, which obviously is leading up to the fact that she's kind of into his look. Like,
Mm.
it's so classic her. I don't know how I didn't see it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's perfect.
And then yeah, obviously, so she's experimenting with relationship contracts, I guess, like
Yep.
just sort of explicitly defining the terms like that, which I 100% back as an idea. I mean,
Yeah,
we
I agree.
constantly gave her shit for how her and Jeremy weren't doing a good job of that,
Weren't
and this is a
clarifying what they. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and this honestly, like, if I ever start trying to date again, I'm tempted to go for something like this. I just think like it's such a convenient way to lay out all the fucking shit right at the start. I'm 100% on board with doing something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you 100%. But yeah, so then this chapter ends with Verona thinking about getting a cat, and it's so perfect. It's such a perfect resolution. If presumably getting Fetrona as her familiar, living out days as a cat. I mean,
Oh,
maybe not even needing to be familiar, just living out their days as a cat.
I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
I think it's really
lie.
cool.
It had not occurred to me, the familiar angle to that. And
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like
I
an
think the
idiot
familiar
for
angle is
that now.
maybe. I don't know.
I
It's
just assumed she was talking winter glamour. It had not occurred
yeah.
to me. Interesting. Sorry, this is
We'll
just. I
see.
feel like an idiot for not at least considering this. I don't know what side I'm on, but yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
either way, I think it's clearly a pretty perfect resolution for all the Verona seeking to escape her humanity. Well, that can be for
yeah.
that Verona kind of
It,
thing.
it it also feels like what we talked about in the episode. I think it was with Lexi, just the other day, where like we were talking a bit about the fetch and how it was like this great opportunity for Verona in her new role as somebody who helps people like Verona's. The fetch was the best example for that, and we're like, this is such an interesting follow through because Verona links it specifically. Everyone tells her to do self care, and Verona thinks to herself, "Well, this counts, right?" Like, and I mean, I'm interested to see whether it will because I think there is a lot of like opportunity to sort of experiment with stuff if you're if you're doing self care on a copy of yourself. Like, it would be funny if it turned out Fetrona was fucking miserable being a cat after a couple of days. Like, if the novelty wore off and Fetrona was like, "I'm not happy with this. We need to do something else." I think that would be really funny and cause Verona to have to do a lot of self reflection.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess we talked a lot about the fetch in that episode, and I'm kind of curious to see what how this goes because I do think this is a really interesting way for Verona to start doing some self care on herself. Yeah,
on a version of herself. Yeah,
yeah, well, small baby steps, right? Like,
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I think it's very interesting.
yeah, potentially could go wrong or whatever, but I have confidence that it's like either way. I think she'll learn lessons from this, and I'm keen to see how that goes.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I
And
agree.
also Sylvia shows up because obviously Sylvia is the one who she explains she's getting a cat to. Which I hope this is not all we're seeing of Sylvia as she pops into town. Connor obviously says that there's no plans to awarrant her at this point, but I just want to see her hang out. Even if we're not doing that, I want to see more of her in Kennet for these few days. I think that'd be fun.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I agree. So I'm as impressed. I do really want to see Sylvia as an awarrant. I think she's
yeah. I think that would be good too.
while she's simultaneously the worst person for it because she travels and it would ruin her current lifestyle, I also just think for her and Verona it would be so good, and I think she'd fall head over heels for this world,
Mm,
like her daughter has, basically.
yeah.
Because the apple did not fall too far from the tree when it comes to Sylvia and Verona, I don't think.
No, they're clearly very similar. Um, So yeah, I mean that's the end of our chapters, but we got some other stuff to go into. We've got some predictions, some power predictions left by the community in our power predictor form. I'll start with mine, which I think is just a small, little, simple one from I'm easily impressed, which is that Verona is going to take the shitty sewer blood from the blood router and use it in blood oaths to Marisica as a way to kind of weaken her a bit, as she has to kind of use shit blood to weaken the blood goddess. Effectively, is the thought. Which is just kind of a small theory, but I think it's quite fun. If it ends up happening, I think
Yeah.
it's very funny.
Stick the modem, figure out where this heavenly blood realm is.
Mm.
Heavenly? Hellish? I don't know. Open a portal to it, stick that portal on the ground, hang the blood modem over it, poison her blood realm by just constantly leaking that blood into the
Yeah,
realm.
yeah, yeah,
Anyway, no, yeah, I love that. That's a fun prediction.
yeah.
I've pulled out a much longer and like I guess more serious one from a bird. Who basically and there's like a very long full version of this that I can't all read out, but it essentially the idea boils down to the fact that like Charles went on that big rant in 19.z about how he was kind of surprised that no like Justice League or Avengers of practitioners had really risen up to face him. Like Musa had kind of done it, but he'd seen that coming and he stomped them pretty easily, and he was surprised there wasn't some other big group fighting him.
Mm.
And obviously, like Bird points out that the Kenneteers are sort of doing that to some degree, but they're not like building a big army. They're building this network of like peace and harmony. Like they're getting Bristow's aware, the Belanger Circle, Ray and his apprentices, like DeRocha, all of these groups, and they're kind of networking them. And so basically, a bird's theorizing that like Charles is maybe just a little bit blind to the effect that's having because he's the violence, like his omniscience is
Judge.
kind of
Yeah.
centered around conflict and
Yeah.
violence.
Yeah.
And so his lens might be tinted away from just not noticing the fact that this power is forming, but through networks and connections and stuff. And like obviously he's aware of it to some degree because he's told them to stop doing it to the Undercity. So like he does notice the negative, but a bird basically theorizes that there's a gap here that he's not noticing the degree to which the Kenneteers are kind of amassing the power of friendship to beat him like the magical girl anime protagonists that they are, to quote a bird.
Yeah.
And I really like some of the ideas here. Like especially the thing that really jumps out to me is at the start of the story, we were told that killing the Carmine was akin to defeating all violence in the region. And it's like, while I don't think the Kenneteers are going to like go that far, well, except until Verona pulls the trigger on whatever her plan is. I do think there's this sense that like the networks that the Kenneteers are forming are beating Charles to a degree because they're eliminating some violence in the region. Like as they network all these distinct groups and get them to stop fighting and working together, that inherently kind of gives the Carmine less traction. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't think they could possibly eliminate it because Charles. There will always be some degree of fighting. Charles's lords are always still going to be a thing. So like, I don't see them destroying violence in the region. But this is one of those things where this could be the edge. Like this is going to be one of the dominoes that falls. Is the fact that there's less inter-practitioner violence and less other violence just because the Kenneteers have got most of them in their network now.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
hell, they're even getting goblins to leave Fairy alone in Thunder Bay. Like I can talk about moving mountains.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I do like this idea as a way to kind of weaken. I don't know if this will be the way to defeat Charles, but definitely kind of weaken him, or as an explanation for why he's kind of overlooking some bits and pieces. I think
Yeah.
makes really a lot of sense. So I think this is really good.
Yeah, especially because the Kenneteers aren't necessarily directly doing this to combat him. So like they're just building this network because they think it's the right thing to do. So as long as it's not framed around something to defeat him, I can see why it would slip through his vision.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, those are our predictions for this week. Remember, if you want to leave a prediction, you can do that by going to the link to our Pale Predictor form in the show notes down below. But of course, we also had a discussion question that we've been running for the last fortnight. Which type of other is your pet secretly?
And we got a lot of great responses to this one, but I just want to call out a general trend that I noticed here, which is that half of them were cats and half of them were dogs.
Yeah.
And
and a
dog
lot
ones,
of the cats were fae and dogs are goblins. I mean, we know it.
I was going to say a lot of the dogs were positive vibes and a lot of the cats were, I would consider, negative.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. Yes. Cats were fae
you're right.
Dogs were goblins.
Yeah, after the discussion on our Discord yesterday, I don't think I'm going to get any traction if I try to claim that for me, fairies versus goblins isn't bad versus good. So,
yeah, you did lean very hard into effectively being a goblin on the Discord the other day, didn't you?
Still maintain that it's weird because I have other takes where I know it's just me and I've like accepted that I'm the weirdo and like it's fine. This is genuinely one where I don't understand why other people don't enjoy being wet.
Is this the swimming in floodwaters one? What are we talking about here?
Oh, just the like not really drying yourself after a shower.
Oh yeah. How you like getting dripping wetness onto your bed.
Yeah. And I don't understand why nobody else anyway. There's more on the Discord, and if people still want to come and yell at me on the Discord, I'm still willing to fight for this because I think it's normal.
Anyway, this discussion question is definitely one of those ones where you should kind of read the answers yourself. Like we'll go through some of them, but we're gonna not do them justice really because we kind of can't. Especially some of them. There were a few. Like Celio 97 who went all out in effectively writing fan fiction of their pets as others, which was great.
It's also a lot of them came with pictures and one even came with video. So that's what you're missing by not, reading them yourself and only getting them through the podcast. So yeah, I guess to get into Celio 97's one, they had two dogs, Esther, who's sort of this animus of companion and vigilance, but who was weakened through some events that happened in the fanfic. So they came out as a bit of a runt. Like
Mm.
I got the vibe, like if you had a Nina in somewhere where people weren't literate, like she'd still be this animus of book nerdom or whatever, but she'd be a lot smaller and weaker because of that. And so that sounds like what happened to Esther. She was this animus of companionship and vigilance in a place that didn't have too much of that, but now she's thriving because she was adopted into a nice family.
Mm.
By
Yeah.
comparison, Barnabas was just from a tunnel of snot in the Warrens and is a gross little fat dog that does really bad farts, but is loved in its new home anyway, which sounds like dogs.
Yeah, definitely. um, I really liked Wolf Tamer Nine's answer, talking about Maisie, who is host to the Squeaky Wheel Complex Spirit. Some anxiety, but also missing a leg and kind of squeaks a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like it's one of those dogs that's just kind of very vocal, but
Yes.
very constantly in a very whiny way.
Yeah, which is fun.
Yeah, they did specify that this dog is now like 11 years old and is it's still very anxious, but is fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved this idea of the squeaky wheel complex spirit that was a mixture of anxiety and yes, rusty wheel noises.
Yeah, very fun, very fun. The highlight of this one was about being excited to get in the car, but then screaming when the car is moving, which was delightful.
Because yeah, my parents' old dogs used to do stuff like that. There's just these patterns where they'd be like, "Oh, we love going for a walk or whatever," and then you'd get like around the block and they'd be like, "Oh, fucking, I'm done. I hate this. Why are we here?" It's like you wanted to come. But yeah, we also got steel hibiscus, which I believe is Malia's secret identity. And I'm sorry, I don't know how you meant to pronounce this name, Egwin, Edwin.
Eugene? I don't know.
I'm good. Yeah. Anyway, basically, Still Hibiscus says that Egwene is an emotional manipulating other. And I'd like to point out at this point they had not specified it was a cat, but I already guessed it was a cat. And in fact, they are. And anyway, Egwene's thing is that they extract guilty feelings by basically complaining about not being petted or whatever. And it's just Egwene exists just to make humans feel bad and squeak at them until they feel bad, and then you have to follow the sacred pact of petting it until it's fed enough on your emotions to be satisfied.
Yeah. Yep. Classic cat behavior. Yeah. I really liked. Well, Beard of Valor's one was very funny. A dog who, a kind of herding dog, who herds the people around them into, certain configurations that suit their desires, I guess, which is very kind of almost like arranging people as per the connections in the room or whatever. I think it's very funny.
Yeah. The term servant of order got thrown out, which I liked. Like
Yeah.
this story of apparently when Beard of Valor visited his brother and the dog insisted that they all sit like in a circle around it, and was moving them to make sure they sat like that was pretty funny. Who else have we got? Tasawat has Maisie Daisy, who is like a fairy based cat, not Fae, fairy with a Y. They compared it to Cherry Pop, the sort of fairy equivalent of Cherry Pop.
Yeah.
Just because it's like whiny and screamy. Her favorite scream time is 4 a.m., which I can appreciate. And yeah, she plots, but it goes out the window the moment like somebody does something distracting, like standing up. And Tasawat finishes by saying, "Despite all this, we're still all under her spell."
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'm easily impressed. Had Skittles the nuisance cat. A lot of these do feel like they're straight out of cats.
Yeah. A lot of these were written before we saw Blank Shanks again in 20.3, which I find hilarious because a lot of them are very, very close.
This was Warbo's way of participating in the discussion question, was putting Blank Shanks back into the story. Anyway, yeah. Skittles is a cat that causes inconveniences, like jumping in front of people when they're going downstairs, uh, or coming, just sitting on you when you're about to get up and do something.
Which, sorry, I've got to call out. That is 100% a real thing.
Yeah.
My sister's cat, I genuinely think it has the ability to detect when I'm about to get up and comes and sits on me at that point, and it's infuriating.
Mm, yeah.
So that's 100%. That's a real thing, and it's a problem.
Yeah. But yeah, so fun times. The domain of Skittles, the nuisance cat, is the common office chair, but when someone else needs to use it, which I thought was pretty
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. To finish off, I also really liked Sweet Manzana's answer, which was basically just I have a little cat and it's a goblin cat, and then there was a link to a video of this cat being a goblin for a minute, and yeah, loved it.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks everyone for leaving your discussion question answers. Again, you can find those in the discussion threads, which are linked in the show notes at the bottom of each episode.
Yep. Don't forget about our Twitter. That's where we post updates and we post memes.
Yes, but we also have a discussion question for next fortnight, which is list some Christmas gifts you would get for some Pale characters, and we'll try and guess who they're for. So what would you gift for characters, practitioners, others in Pale? But leave the who it's for, maybe in like spoiler tags on Reddit or something like
Yeah.
that. Comment, I don't know, and then we'll try and figure it out.
Do try and give the answer if you can, though, just because last time we played this game, we didn't get the answers to all of them. That was very upsetting.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a few who wouldn't need to, like if somebody answers with like a nail, I don't, we've got that one covered. I think I know who that's for. But yeah, I'm interested to see people get real crazy with this one, like they did with the stopping practitioners one.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you can answer those in the discussion threads in the show notes, as we said. While you're surfing the web, why not check out doofmedia.com as well? A great place to visit with great activities for you to do on the website.
Yep. And if you love that website, if you love this show, if you love anything Doof related, patreon.com/Doof Media is the place to basically keep this network around and keep us doing stuff.
Yeah. And while you're on Patreon, make sure you check out Wildbow's Patreon as well. Go to patreon.com/Wildbow and give him some coin. Will he take tasks in exchange for the coins? Maybe if you want, he'll stick a stamp to a letter for you in exchange for the money you give him on Patreon, but I think that's it.
I think he writes chapters is the point.
Oh,
Ruben.
that's the task, yeah. What's the costume that he changes into whenever he writes a chapter, do you think?
I don't know, just normal people clothes, probably. Just
Yeah,
it's not the most extravagant, I imagine.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so make sure you stop by Wildbow, patreon.com/Wildbow. Thank you for joining us, folks, for this triple chapter episode. And we'll be back to our regular schedule next week.
Yep, I think, the most words we've covered in a single episode by about 2,000 words.
Done. Nailed it. Ka-ching, I guess. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.